All right, so I'll go ahead and get started with some housekeeping. Um, Thank you so much for everyone who's here so far for joining us on this conversation about SEO recovery and how to overcome Google algorithm updates. So if you're just joining us, feel free to drop into the chat where you're coming from, where you're logging in today from. This webinar is being recorded, and so we will be sending out a link with the recording in an email in a few days, as well as some additional resources that we will be talking about over the course of this session. Lori, welcome from Houston. Glad you're here today. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. We might have a few more people join, including the CEO of Nextany. He might be joining to chime in a little bit on our topic today. But I'm just going to go and get started since it's 4:03. So just real quick, a little bit about me. My name is Amanda Farrell. I'm a content marketer. I have around 7 or 8 years of experience working in HubSpot. And I currently work for Nextany. We are a HubSpot partner. We help businesses implement HubSpot, migrate information, set up websites, as well as help with overall content and SEO strategy. And if you have anything that you need help with, especially with HubSpot auditing and coaching, we are offering a special right now for 25% off of our HubSpot audit and coaching package. So if that's something that interests you, definitely be sure to take a look at that. And I also wanted to let you all know that we have another HUG event coming up this week, tomorrow. Our creative director, Megan, who is in charge of designing our websites for clients, she's going to be going over WordPress versus HubSpot. So if you have any questions about moving from WordPress to HubSpot, that's a really good session to join us for tomorrow. So definitely be sure to check that out. And let me see if I can grab that link for you all to drop into the chat. One moment. All right, and you can use that link there to register for tomorrow's event. So let's get into our topic today. So today's agenda, we're going to be covering what are core updates. We're also going to go over why the algorithm update matters to your SEO strategy and what are some of the things that you can do when there is an update. So first and foremost, what are core updates? So every day, search engines like Google and other engines like Bing, they are making changes, small changes every day to their search engines. On average, according to Search Engine Land, one stat that they had there was that there are about 13 changes made every day on average. But this is different from the Google core updates. And some of the more popular ones that you've probably heard about are things like Panda. This was one of the biggest SEO updates that reduced visibility of so-called content farms. So it wasn't intended to target these specific websites, but the update had the effect of essentially weeding out those low quality websites that weren't providing good content for the search queries. And it replaced it with unique high quality sites. Another really popular or well-known update that you're probably familiar with is the Hummingbird update. And this was to focus more on relevant search results per queries and introduced complex searches like long-tail keywords. So people who are looking for information beyond those basic, what is SEO, what is content marketing, looking for more tactical, deeper content related to those root keywords. So those are some of the major updates that we've seen in the past few years as far as core updates go. Now, Google's most recent core update recently was in August, starting in August and ended in September. The purpose of this one was to improve search results by showing more useful content and less content made to perform well on search. So focusing on content made for humans, basically, right? And the impact is that it caused significant rank movement and changes to a lot of search engine results. One way to think about a core update is that it's like you have a favorite restaurants list that you put together for your friends. And after a few years, your favorite restaurant will probably change. Some places will probably close, other places will open. The menu might change, the quality of food might change because there's a different chef. A lot of things can affect your rankings of your favorite restaurants, right? And so every year or so, you might reassess what your favorite restaurants are and what you would recommend to your friends. And certain things might move up higher on the list, um, given consistent positive experiences that you've had there. And it's not necessarily that your previous favorites are no longer good or that they're now bad. It's just that there are other restaurants that you like better. And that's kind of reflective of what happens when there's an SEO core update with Google. So, to just dive deeper into this definition of a core update, here's a quote directly from Google. Several times a year, Google makes significant broad changes to our search algorithms and systems. We refer to these as core updates, and we give notice when they happen on our list of Google search ranking updates. Core updates are designed to ensure that overall we're delivering on our mission to present helpful and reliable results for searchers. These changes are broad in nature and don't target specific sites or individual web pages. As content on the web changes, we assess and update our systems to keep pace as a whole. And although, of course, specific, so now we're going to talk a little bit about like why would an update affect your website, right? So Google says they're broad changes; they're not meant to affect a certain website, but obviously, sort of illustrative of this chart here, websites do see oftentimes significant dips in their organic traffic when there is an update. And there's a lot of things that can contribute to this. Sometimes it's a matter of just waiting and seeing how things level out and to see if your traffic reverts back to normal levels or not. Other things that might be affecting it are essentially the quality of your content, right? Because again, the mission is focused on providing people with better content. So just to drive that point home a little bit more, here's another quote from Google talking more about the design of these core updates. It's to ensure that overall they're delivering on their mission to present relevant and authoritative content to searchers. So thinking about those kind of keywords that we see them talking about relevance, quality, authoritativeness, this is a good opportunity for you to look at your content and figure out how can I move forward and change my strategy in order to combat any sort of dips in my rankings. And so things like content quality is a big contributing factor to a rankings dip. Updates often prioritize high quality, relevant content and penalizing websites with low value or what they might consider spammy content. So mentioned again in one of those core updates, content farms, you want to make sure that you are focusing on content that is meaningful and rich and targeted to your specific audience for your business. Another thing is technical aspects. The algorithm updates can also focus on technical issues like website speed, mobile friendliness, security, like if you have an SSL certificate or not. That can all impact your site's performance and in the search results and shuffle around your rankings as a result of the updates as well. Another thing to consider is overall user experience. So Google aims, to provide the most relevant and helpful results to users. So if people are coming to your website and it's difficult to navigate, if there's certain behavior signals that are being sent to Google, like a high bounce rate that indicates they're not finding the information that they need, or pages per session, things like that, that can be a signal to Google that people aren't having a good user experience. So definitely take a look at how people overall navigate your website and how you can update that to make it a better overall user experience. And then, of course, your overall SEO strategy, algorithm changes, website owners and content marketers really need to make sure they're adapting their SEO strategies to ensure that your content is aligning with that mission that Google has to present relevant and authoritative content to searchers. So if you are seeing a dip after an SEO core update and you're curious what is it that you can do, well, the first thing that Google recommends is that you don't want to panic and you want to remember the basics when it comes to SEO and when it comes to your long-term content planning. So in some cases, you might not need to make any changes at all. There are cases where if there's a recent update, there can be sometimes bugs that happen to where things will fluctuate, but they'll end up reverting back to similar levels that you've experienced in the past. So be proactive, but don't be reactive right away as far as monitoring what's going on with your website when there's a core update. And then making sure that you give it some time to see how things kind of pan out. If you are in the category of a website that is not seeing levels revert back to what they were previously, you can also go to, I have a link here and I'll provide this resource for you all. Oops. One moment here. I'll go ahead and drop this in the chat so you all can look at it. Oops. Maybe. So you can always check this out here. If you want to get an update on any sort of bug reports, if the rankings are experiencing any sort of ongoing issue. And then once you know all of those things have been resolved and you're still seeing those rankings dip for particular pages that previously were performing well, that's when you know you'll want to start planning out an SEO and content strategy to address the issue. And again, you want to be focusing on the key elements of that Google mission that they talked about: relevance and authority. So before you, hit the ground running with making any changes, you next want to check your overall keyword rankings and the pages that are attributed to those particular keyword rankings. So first of all, figure out if you're seeing a small dip or a large dip. So small dip would be something like going from position 2 to position 4. Google would recommend here to not take any drastic action. And in fact, they recommend not making any changes to content that's already performing well. So if you're in the top 5, you're pretty good, you're solid. There's not really any need to start making any major changes there. However, if you're seeing a large drop, if you're going from, say, position 4 to 29, for example, this is where you do want to do a deeper assessment of your website, your pages, and competition to determine what the cause of that drop is. Next step is you're going to want to identify the pages that have seen the large drop in traffic. So you can use tools like Google Search Console to help you create a list of pages that have dropped in the rankings. There's also some really great tools out there. I personally love using SEMrush. They have a free version of their tool to where you can do audits and also set up position tracking for targeted keywords that are important to your industry, your business, your target audience. So that's something to also consider doing to help you spot rankings that have taken a hit and in the future continue to monitor those target keywords and see how you're progressing. But you can use free tools like Google Search Console to review your top pages and the queries that are attributing to those high rankings of those pages. And then, just create a list of those pages that are, your problem pages. And then that's when you're going to take a look at how you can refine and optimize that content to improve your rankings. Some things to consider. So there are over 200 signals that can influence ranking, but 2 that I wanted to talk about specifically to consider and that are well within your control as a content marketer are content freshness and frequency. So part of the 2010 caffeine algorithm update, content freshness was a major part of that update. And what this refers to is it's not necessarily about when the content piece is published, but it's more about how dynamic the content is and whether new data or details should be added to make it more relevant or accurate. So this is, depending on the topic, like historical events, publishing new content won't necessarily knock out the top performer without backlinks. And so we'll talk a little bit more about backlinks as well and building off-page authority in that way. But if there's, new research coming out that's relevant to your audience or new statistics or data, that might be a good opportunity to look at pages that are talking about this kind of content. That might be a good opportunity for you to infuse more accurate and newer data to improve the freshness. Freshness isn't important for every site or topic, though. There is a element called QDF. This acronym, it stands for Query Deserves Freshness. And this is Google's way of prioritizing or categorizing certain types of content that should be fresher. And as a result, Google will show the most recent results more often than a topic where it's not deemed to be QDF. So this is, relevant to developing news stories, celebrity news, natural disasters, things that are timely, essentially, and where people are going to want to be finding the most recent updates on a particular story. Search intent can also impact this. So obviously, like informational is a type of search intent where that's going to be really important for freshness. But not every query, again, meets this standard. There are certain evergreen content pieces where you're not going to necessarily have a lot of major timely updates that you're going to have to consider. So consider the type of content, obviously, if it is more of a news story versus an evergreen piece where, maybe just yearly updates will suffice in terms of freshness. Something to avoid when you are considering updating a piece of content in order to make it fresher is that you don't want to just change a few words and then update the publishing date. Google will catch on to that, and it will not help move the needle at all in terms of your rankings for that content. So freshness, it really depends on your industry and the topic and whether or not the QDF categorization will apply. Something else also that I wanted to mention that is within the control of a content marketer and a good place to start as far as your overall SEO strategy goes is frequency. Blogging more often will help ensure that your site is crawled more often. And this is also relevant to the caffeine update. But you won't necessarily be penalized if you aren't blogging every week or every month. But it is a good best practice to get into the habit of doing and being consistent with it, whether it is once a month, once a quarter, whatever it is that you and your team can handle. If you don't blog super often and your website isn't being crawled on a regular basis because of that, you can always submit a new page to be crawled right after publishing in Google Search Console. So that's an important tip to keep in mind if you are concerned about the frequency at which Google crawls your site. Next is doing a competitor analysis. And this is specific to your SEO competitors. These are websites that are ranking in organic, unpaid search results for the same keywords that you're targeting. And something to keep in mind when you are doing this analysis is that your SEO competitors aren't necessarily the same as your direct competitors. So you might see websites come up when you do this analysis that are brands that you're not maybe familiar with because they aren't directly providing the same solutions, the same services or products that you're providing, but they are targeting, for whatever reason, the same kind of keywords or groupings of keywords. So that's something important to keep in mind. And you can use a tool like SEMrush to help you gather this information on your main organic competitors. I would say put together at least a list of the top 5. You can always go a little bit deeper than that if you like. And then after you have this information, you're going to want to start identifying those keywords that they are ranking well for, or that they've basically started to outrank you for after an update. And so you want to make sure you find these keyword gaps. This is the difference between the keywords you rank for and the keywords that your competitors are ranking for, right? So take a look at what those common keywords are and what their positions look like compared to yours. You can use a tool like the keyword gap tool in SEMrush to help you analyze this. There's an option to find shared or weak keywords. I would recommend starting there as far as developing your SEO strategy to help improve your rankings, especially if that shared or weak keyword is something that you have identified as a previously well-ranking keyword for your website. Next step after you've identified those keyword gaps, and you've identified the pages that need help and improvement, this is where you're going to want to start really asking some hard questions about your content and about the quality of the content. So you're going to want to improve your content to make it more relevant to your audience. Before you start making any changes, make sure you keep some of these things in mind as far as avoiding quick fixes. Again, updating a few different words, keywords, that could get you honestly into hot water with keyword stuffing. Google is much smarter in terms of their ability to analyze meaningful content updates. So quick fixes is not going to work. Review how you can improve your content in really meaningful ways. One thing you can do is lean on subject matter experts in your company. If you have people who understand a topic really well, infusing some of their expertise is a really great way to help improve that content and improve the authority. Google has a self-assessment that you can use, which let me see if I can grab that link for you all in the chat here. So you can check out this evaluation that Google has that will help you kind of go through a list of questions to reflect on the quality of the content and start making improvements there. And if you have a piece that just you don't think can be salvaged, the only solution might be for some is just to start over. You might need to completely restructure the piece and start from scratch, and that's okay. But if you do decide to go that route, make sure that it's your last resort. And ultimately, as you are going through your content and making these updates, you want to make sure that you're creating content for people and not search engines, because that calls back to Google's mission, where they really are centering the searchers, the users of these search engines. And so if you are aligning with that mission, Google will ultimately reward you for that, because it will see that you are creating good quality content for a particular search term. And so, oops, excuse me. So 4 aspects that I want to go over that affect a page ranking and will help you really hone in on improving the quality are these 4 principles here, these 4 aspects when it comes to originality, readability, on-page SEO, and tone of voice. These are all things that you can focus on as a content marketer. You won't necessarily need to involve anyone else on your team if you have developers or whatnot. These are all things that you can own as a content marketer to make changes and improve the quality. So originality is the first thing. There's lots of content out there, especially for high search volume keywords, right? And so one thing that you want to do is differentiate the content by making it more original, providing better insights, a unique perspective on a topic. This is again where you can lean on some subject matter experts to give you some quotes, some really in-depth analysis Things like that will really help improve the originality and the quality of your piece. Take a look at those SEO competitors that are ranking well and ask yourself, where is it that I can give more details that they're not giving? What are some frequently asked questions that you know your company gets from prospective clients? And how can you maybe address those questions within a content piece if it's relevant to that particular topic? So, how can you really give people rich and meaningful content to engage with and answer questions that your competitors aren't answering? That's really going to help you outrank and improve the originality. The other one is readability. A lot of times, something that you can really do to improve a piece is just restructuring things a little bit, making it more digestible, easier to scan, easier for people to, once they hit that page after a search query, to within the first few seconds of landing on that page, recognize if the content is going to address their specific concerns with things like well framed sections, headers, bullet points, ordered lists, unordered lists, things like pro tip highlights, uh, italics, emphasizing certain important text. Basically, the goal here is to make it scannable and super quick to digest. And so for people who are looking for those quick answers, they'll find it. And then for people who are looking to dive a little bit deeper into the topic, they'll be able to assess, this has the information that I need and I want to continue reading. On-page SEO is another thing that you want to think about. And this can include things like your header tags being correct, making sure that you've got your H3s nestled under your H2s appropriately, that you're using internal linking. That's particularly important when you are trying to signal to Google, hey, we're an authority on this particular topic, and here are all the subtopics within this topic that are relevant. You want to make sure that you're linking out to all of that content so that you can build up that link juice and really help push those keywords up together. It's kind of like that phrase, a rising tide lifts all boats, right? So if you're doing that internal linking correctly, it will help. It'll act like a lifting tide, essentially, in that sense. You also want to make sure you're adding things like images and that they've got the proper alt tags so that screen readers can identify them easily. You want to check your title tag, your meta descriptions, making sure that those are between 120 to 158 characters. And that you're also utilizing keywords within those meta descriptions. Also take a good look at your URL structure, especially if you're cloning. I know in the past this has been an issue for me and for if I'm doing a lot of cloning in HubSpot with a blog because I like a particular page. If you publish it before you check that URL and change it, that can be a big issue. So make sure that you are checking that URL. It doesn't have to be an exact match to your page title, but it is good for user experience, and it does make it more clickable if there's shared commonality between your URL link and your page title, obviously. You also want to make sure that you are using your target keywords throughout your copy, but you want to make sure that the frequency is in a way where it's not going to trigger keyword stuffing, but that it's natural. It is the way that people normally would talk about this topic in the keyword. And something to keep in mind too, that word count alone is not going to help you rank higher. So if a topic does start to become unfocused and you're trying to cover every single detail, but you're having trouble organizing those thoughts in a way that does keep it scannable and digestible, that might be a good opportunity for you to turn some of those sections into its own blog, into a subtopic that you can link out to later on. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And then, of course, lastly, when it comes to on-page SEO, which you might need some help with a developer ensuring that this is correct, but you want to make sure that your web page is mobile friendly and has responsive web design. So if that's something that you personally aren't sure about, that's a good opportunity to reach out to your web developers and work with them to make sure all of your pages are mobile friendly. And lastly, talking about these aspects affecting the on-page SEO rankings, the last thing that you want to think about is having a consistent tone of voice, because this will help users identify your brand, and it'll help you feel more authentic and that they can rely on what it is that you're telling them. That it'll help build that trustworthiness. Some tips to help you develop a tone of voice, if that's not something that you and your team have really figured out yet, is to adapt your tone of voice to the audience, the context, and the purpose of each channel. So there is the opportunity to sometimes change up your tone of voice a little bit on, say, social, where you are talking about a topic where you want to be a little bit more friendly or approachable, versus an article that might be going over the statistics of a new study or a report, where your tone of voice might be a little bit more polished in that case. But if that is the case, you want to make sure that you are consistent within each of those channels in terms of that tone of voice. You want to be consistent, authentic, relatable, memorable, and engaging. The next step is improving your content authority. So we talked a little bit about backlinks and how that can help build off-page authority. But one principle to keep in mind that's really important when we're thinking about authority and how we can improve upon that is this EAT principle that Google uses to help identify pieces that have what they would consider good authority. And so those those elements include experience, things like the firsthand experience of the author. So providing examples, stories to illustrate a particular point, that's always a really great way to demonstrate firsthand experience. The next is expertise of the author. So if you yourself don't have any particular credentials on a topic, this is again where you can maybe pull in some quotes from subject matter experts who do have the credentials to back up what it is that they're saying. Um, the A stands for authoritativeness of the author and the main content itself and the website overall, how that authority ranking looks. And then finally, the T stands for trustworthiness. So is the page accurate? Is the website accurate? Is it honest, safe? Does it have the proper SSL certificates? And is it reliable? And one of the ways that HubSpot knows that there's really good authority is, like I was mentioning before, the backlinks. So if other people are linking to your website as a resource, that's a really great signal and indicator for Google that you have a certain amount of authority on a topic. And so I wanted to just make sure that we're thinking about, when we think about content authority, there's only so much that you can do in terms of on-page authority building. And some of those things are making sure that the content's easy to read, that it's easy to trust, being transparent about who the author is, providing author bio information for people to check out who this person is, linking to resources if you're making a particular claim. Those are ways that you can improve your on-page content authority. Also making sure that you've got an easy to navigate website and that, again, you've got all accurate information within that page. But something that you also want to make sure you're focused on too is that off-page authority building. And this is where you're going to want to think about your backlink strategy and how you can connect with website owners who are maybe in a similar space as you, but they're targeting a different audience. But perhaps you have a report or a website page, a really good article that would be relevant for their audience, or would be a really great piece for them to link to from another article that they've already got published. That's where you can spend some time figuring out what those websites are, and reaching out to those people and providing them with this content, and explaining to them the value that adding that backlink will provide for their audience and for their readers. Something to also consider when you're looking at your backlink analytics is if you have any toxic backlinks. This might also be a good opportunity to disavow certain backlinks that are toxic. And these would be websites that have really low authority, really bad rankings from Google in terms of their trustworthiness. And so you want to try and associate your website and your content with as many good quality websites as possible. And also don't discount things like brand mentions on social media. People sharing your articles, your blogs on social media does impact your authority. Things like online forums, news outlets, and podcasts, that can also be a part of your backlink strategy as well. So the next step here, after you have addressed some of the content quality issues and the content authority, you also want to make sure you're addressing technical SEO issues. You'll want to start with a content audit. If you're in HubSpot, if you're using HubSpot for your website hosting, there is an SEO tool that you can use to check to see what sort of recommendations it has to begin improving any sort of technical SEO issues you might have. Also really handy that I wanted to call out is the impact, technical difficulty, and role. These are all options that you can filter by, kind of to help you get started. So if you are a marketer and you want to first address the issues that you can take a look at and figure out on your own, this is a really great tool to help you filter that out. And then if you need to bring on other people on your team, like developers, you can compile that list and share that information with them. And so when you're looking at technical SEO issues, some of the items that you want to focus on are going to be things like your page speed. That can be a huge detriment to your rankings, the load times, core web vital signs. You want to make sure if there are any broken links that you are finding those and fixing those. You want to make sure that you have the proper headings, page titles, meta descriptions, making sure that your internal and external links are correct as well. Making sure that you have an XML sitemap that's reflective of your current site structure. And also making sure that you have things like schema markup tagged properly depending on the content type. This is also super important for Google. If you are, like the recipes, for instance, if that's something that's part of your website, you want to make sure that you're using the correct structure markups to allow Google to recognize that content type and provide those on the search engine results appropriately. But without the proper markup or structured data, that will be an issue. And then lastly, another really important thing to keep in mind are your canonical tags. So if you have any duplicate pages for any reason, there could be lots of different reasons why. One example might be that you're running a test of 2 different pages to see, that you're doing like a conversion rate optimization test. But if you're not thinking, but if you have both of those published, Google might have difficulty figuring out which one to rank. So consider how a canonical tag might help you in that particular instance. And then, of course, I've also got here on our slide, if you want to check your, and Gabriel just dropped the link there. If you want to check your website in terms of what are some of the major technical issues that you might want to focus on in the coming months, go ahead and add your website to the website grader there. So next step, creating new content and optimizing old content with topic clusters. So this should be a big part of your overall long-term content planning already and your SEO strategy. If this isn't something that you are already doing, thinking in terms of topic clusters, I definitely recommend you to start approaching your SEO with that kind of mentality. Um, if you have HubSpot, if you're using HubSpot for your blog writing, there is and for if you have HubSpot, I should preface this by saying it's available with professional and enterprise. But if you have those plans in HubSpot, you can use the topic cluster tool to help you plan out your overall strategy when it comes to a particular keyword grouping that you are targeting, and then figuring out how you want to improve your rankings by blogging about relevant subtopics. Um, so this will help you identify keywords that are related to that main topic that you are trying to rank for. It'll explain to you, it'll help you give you insights on things like the amount of monthly searches, the keyword difficulty, a lot of aspects of your keyword rankings that'll help you kind of determine and identify what keywords are good for you to start going after, and that you have the most potential for growth based on the things like the search volume, the relevance to your audience, and the current keyword difficulty. You can also use other free tools like SEMrush's free version. I think things like Google search engine or some other things you can lean on to kind of start to identify certain queries that are bringing people to your website. And you can kind of decide, is that something that I want to start developing content for or not? And is it something that will relate to the overall keyword groupings that I'm trying to target? And you want to focus on, when you're thinking about subtopics too, the concept of long tail keywords. So these are keywords that dive a lot deeper into a topic that aren't necessarily high search volume, but oftentimes with long tail keywords, what you'll find is that these are people who are looking to solve very particular problems. And if it's relevant to the solution that you're selling, especially if you use a keyword tool like SEMrush, and it has a search intent like commercial or transactional, focusing in on those long tail keywords with that kind of intent can really help you drive more people who are interested in making a purchase, people who are more sales ready, essentially. So that's something to keep in mind when you're developing these topic clusters. And then last step is to monitor your website's ongoing performance. I mentioned setting up, target keyword lists to monitor. You can also use the SEO Analyze tool in HubSpot to help you monitor any sort of changes in terms of your page rankings and your overall average position rankings for your website. And just to drive home things that you should be really keeping an eye on, some metrics that I really try to pay attention to when it comes to improving overall website rankings are things like visibility, which is a metric based on click-through rate that shows a website's progress in Google's top 100 for keywords. So you'll usually start at a very small percentage, a lot of the times 2-3%. But as long as you're continuing to see some upward mobility there as far as your numbers, that's always a good sign to just continue to be growing your visibility on a particular keyword. Another metric to really pay attention to is estimated traffic. And this is calculated to show the estimated number of people that will visit your domain. And then also, of course, the average position for your rankings and the keywords that are within your campaign and that you are targeting for growth. So that's all I have for you all today. If you have any questions, feel free to drop it in the chat. If you have any thoughts, anything that you want to add, feel free to add that to the chat or to unmute yourself and let us know, what are some of the tactics or strategies that you use in order to overcome SEO updates or Google algorithm updates. If anybody doesn't have anything, or I don't know, Gabe, if there's anything that you want to add, feel
Yeah,
free.
I wanted to ask you. I know kind of the answer, but I wanted to ask the question, the $1 million question about AI, and the use of AI for all the stuff that you've been talking about, and you touch on some of that. But a lot of people are creating content with AI, and at the end of the day, you mentioned keep it relevant, keep it useful, keep follow Google rules, but it's all about being human, right? Do you want to touch on the use of AI and what you would recommend and what you would not recommend? I just had a conversation with a sales opportunity 2 seconds ago, and we were just talking about that ChatGPT is an amazing tool that makes it look so easy that it looks like ChatGPT does it all, when actually ChatGPT doesn't do it all. So the input is so important. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I think for me, for, for me, I see AI as a really great tool for brainstorming or for kind of thinking about it as an addition to the next to me team. So if I'm not sure where to start on something, or if I'm having writer's block, that's when I'll probably turn to AI. But when it comes to really writing the majority of a piece, I definitely recommend people to not leverage AI too much there, um, and to really just use it to help you kind of think about, from the perspective, like the prompts that I like to use with AI are giving them a persona to think about, and then asking AI, how would you as this person think about this particular topic? Or what are some questions you might have about it? Just to kind of give me some ideas that I maybe just have never really thought of before. And that can really help you improve your writing. And the other thing too is it does also help, I feel like, with AI, if you want to dive a little bit deeper into topics, um, really questioning it and asking it, like, why did it give me this particular result for my prompt? And then, of course, ultimately making sure that you're proofreading everything. If you have a subject matter expert to go over stuff and make sure that everything's accurate, that's always important too. But relying solely on AI to produce all of the content, that's where you're definitely going to get into trouble.
Yeah, I know, and I feel like that's where the problem of the perception of ChatGPT and AI is. People perceive ChatGPT as the know-it-all, writer that can bring any kind of content to the table and do it all, right? And if you're expecting AI to come up with the content for you, that's where you get in trouble, because again, it's a good ideation, it's a good way to find inspiration, but unless you're providing um, deep inputs, then the output will definitely be flagged by companies like Google immediately, because it's
Yeah.
so easy to identify that this was created with AI. But what's interesting is that when you provide a comprehensive input to it, the content is not flagged, does not become a problem, and actually becomes, immediately Google ranks it on the first page without issues, even though 100% of the blog may have been written by AI, the input was 100% you, and it was
Mhm.
just regurgitated into another piece of content that was created. And a good example of that is transcripts. You can have this webinar, we can just run the transcript of this webinar through ChatGPT and tell ChatGPT write a whole blog, and that, I can assure you, that article will not be flagged as a issue, because you did research, you created the slides, your stuff, you gave examples from real life, we are having this conversation. AI can never come up with all of that, and write an article, because that's not what AI does, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And anything to add on that sense on the input you give AI?
Yeah, I think that matters a lot is the starting point. So if
Mm-hmm.
you provide AI with documentation, especially if it's super relevant to your product offerings, to your business, um, having that foundation will drive more originality versus asking AI a prompt that would force it to rely on its database of information that is scraped from the internet at large before a certain point. And so that's where, if it is doing that, that's where you won't have as much originality.
Of
Um,
course.
so
It's the same thing over and over again, and
yeah.
it sends the same signals to the same piece of content. Great question from Deborah there. And yes, Laura, we're going to send the recording later. But Deborah said, "Is Google AI overviews? Is that going to change it all?" And I'm gonna tell you something that just literally happened like right before this meeting. I had a meeting with a lead that is pretty close to turning into a client that said they found us on ChatGPT. And this is my first, by the way. They made a specific question, a specific query of they were trying to find an agency that did these things, and they said, "What other agencies do that?" And ChatGPT sent them to our website, which I never imagined that was going to be something that would bring us a lead, let alone a potential client. But I'm going to tell you that as long as the content you're writing is helpful for people, you're answering the your ideal client's questions, you're answering the right questions. Not only Google AI will put you at the top in the AI answer, but also ChatGPT and other AIs might too. So I'm not saying good SEO will also be good AI SEO, but it is probably going to be. Now things are going to change because Google won't be showing results as links anymore, right? It'll be showing results as text. So you might lose some of those people that are looking for just the information, um, because they might not see that the information came from your website. And I anticipate that affecting visits and traffic and all these different things. But I also anticipate that reducing the amount of traffic from people that have no intent to buy your products while keeping or maybe improving the amount of visits you get from people with intent. Do you agree, Amanda?
Yeah, and I personally don't think it'll have a huge impact because the type of people who are already likely to just scan the meta description or the bullet points that Google would be pulling from the top result before it moved to its AI, those are the same type of people with the AI results. They're just going to scan what it says and move on. With most of the search queries for the AI results as well, Google does offer additional links on the side for you to learn more, for you to dive deeper. And so I think it really just depends on the type of searcher and who they are already, and whether or not they were the type of person to likely click on that result, that SERP, top ranking result, and read more, or if
Mm-hmm.
they were just the type of person to just scan and then bounce because they were just looking for a quick answer versus
Yeah.
someone who already is probably doing deeper research using long tail keywords. Again, I think is really what people should be focusing on to drive conversions and to really attract those buyers, those sales ready buyers that are looking for the solutions that you provide. So personally, I don't think it will alter your, like, you might see a dip in traffic for those queries that were more top of the funnel, kind of broad. Like you might see a dip there, but I don't think that it'll ultimately affect personally, I don't think it'll affect too much, because already the search engine results pages were kind of fostering this behavior of not clicking through already.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I always give the example. We rebranded years ago, almost 10 years ago. We used to be called Destiny Group, and now we're Nextiny Marketing. So, long story short, when we rebranded and we changed our domain name, we did everything right. But all of a sudden, we went from 3,000 visits a month to 1,000 visits a month. And I was outraged. I thought we broke SEO, that we did it all wrong, even though we did that for a lot of companies for a long time. And all of a sudden we realized that there was this video game that launched a month or two before we did the rebrand, that was called Destiny. It
Oh,
was a
yeah.
huge video game.
I
Probably
have
you all know it. And in Destiny, you could create groups that you could connect and talk to each other. And it was a big deal. So everybody was Googling Destiny groups. And we were showing up on the first page, first position, because our website was called destinygroup.com. Long story short, I'm happy we lost all that traffic. So
Yeah.
losing traffic is not necessarily a bad thing, as long as you're not losing the traffic with intent. So let's keep focusing on that. Like Amanda say, keep answering your ideal clients' questions, keep creating educational content that can bring people to your website to learn, but also make sure you focus on intent and nothing else. Yes, educate about related things, but always focus on who is on the other side. The audience needs to be audience with intent. So that should help you when people freak out. How many SEO is dead blog articles are out there, that some of them are like 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I think we wrote one 12 years ago or something like that. SEO is dead. Yeah, AI is not going to kill SEO either.
Nope. Because again, at the core of it is delivering good quality content, having that very specific audience in mind, and answering those questions that they have. And
Exactly.
people will always turn to a search engine when they have a question. The way in which they interact with that search engine might change. But at the end of the day, it's that saying, content is king. I think that's never going to change.
Definitely. Great
Are
job,
there
Amanda. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So we're at 5 o'clock. If you guys do have any questions, add them real quick to the chat and we'll see if we can get to them. Otherwise, we'll be sending out the recording in a couple of days, as well as some resources to help you guys implement an SEO strategy for recovery. But yeah, if that is all, if there are no other questions, I'll go ahead and close out the session. Say thank you all for coming. Really appreciate you being here. And hopefully we'll see you at the next one.